cool. Thanks a lot, Jon Kelly, New Brunswick's own, for being with us tonight. Now, tonight, we're going to talk about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu history of New Brunswick. Last week, we talked about Nova Scotia, which obviously I'm very familiar with. I'm not as familiar with the history of New Brunswick. I was looking at the list that I got from Josh Blanchard. I think he was helping out with this too. Right. And so far, the last that I heard, we have 39 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts in New Brunswick. Is that correct?
Yeah, give or take one or two. Yeah, definitely. It's crazy.
Right. So that's cool. And you, Jon Kelly, are on that list. And why don't you just start telling everyone a little bit about yourself, how you kind of got interested in jiu-jitsu, a little bit about your jiu-jitsu journey.
Originally, I have a Taekwondo background, and it was kind of funny. I was going through a divorce, not funny, but and I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I said, you know what, now's the time. I have lots of free time. I want to learn BJJ, MMA, quite popular at the time, and called Sam Johnson, said, hey, is there anybody nearby? And he said, you're in luck. There's a guy named Craig Wilson. He's just a blue belt, but I'm sure he'd love to, share some techniques. So I would teach my Taekwondo classes. And when I was done, Craig would come in and beat the heck out of me and teach me just the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu. And if it really wasn't for him, there wouldn't be an MXT or Jon Kelly right now. So my hats go off to him for sure.
Okay, cool. So that's Craig. What was his last name?
Wilson, Craig Wilson.
Craig Wilson. So what year would this have been when you kind of started training jiu-jitsu with him?
2006.
2006. Okay.
Yeah.
So I started in 2007. So that would have been roughly around the same time. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. There's a lot of crossover with Taekwondo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. Because like Taekwondo is a little bit newer than karate or judo would be, and so a little bit more like cross training and training at other places, and a little bit more open mind, right, to different training methods and stuff. And it's funny, you guys are talking about Kevin Taylor and Peter Martell, and when I was doing Taekwondo, I was actually at Kevin's house one time after a Taekwondo event, watching. It wasn't even UFC, it was some other MMA event, and he was talking about, I'm doing this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu stuff now, and so yeah, cool, and not really paying attention, and now years later going, wow, I wish I'd have jumped in back then, right? It was probably 98, 99 or something like that, so it was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've definitely been in Kev's place many times and been in the dojo. Hats and all this stuff set up. So yeah, that's awesome. Really cool. So who would you say was the first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in New Brunswick?
Sam Johnson, hands down. Sam's really like he's the pioneer in New Brunswick. Dana was, shortly after that, Dana Dixon. Yeah. But yeah, Sam was he's a legend. He was always like this intense guy that wanted to learn the most intense things. Reminds me kind of like Dave LeDuc nowadays, with the left way and stuff. And so Sam's got black belts like Hapkido and Choi Shindo and Taekwondo. And I remember when I did Taekwondo, and Sam was like, hey, I'm learning this new Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I'm thinking, well, martial arts are from Asia, what's this Brazilian stuff? And he's like, oh, Professor Marcus Soares. Oh, professor, like these aren't university guys. Like, they're supposed to be a sensei, right? And now, after that, I was like, gee, yeah, I really want to learn this stuff now. But yeah, back then he was kind of like a pioneer, and he had been training with Marcus Soares, and I think he got his blue and maybe purple from Marcus. And then Joe Moreira was doing tours. He had like affiliates in Maine, so it was a little bit easier for them to interact. So Sam went under Joe Moreira, former UFC fighter, and started training with him. And that's how I got kind of started under the Joe Moreira system.
Okay, interesting. So it's kind of cool. So he was kind of going down to Maine and had some other guys. Kevin, Peter were going down to Henzo's. Right. So it's kind of cool how the different styles kind of come from the different places so far, just on the East Coast, mostly from what I've heard.
Yeah, no, it was really neat. Like I remember going to a Joe Moreira seminar back in like 2007 or 8, and it was like 3 hours on a Friday night and then 4 hours on Saturday morning. And I probably remember none of it, but still have the VHS tapes. I was laughing at Ray McKenna and talking about VHS tapes. Like, yeah, I'm kind of old too. I got the same thing. Got a
Yeah.
few boxes of old tapes and
Tell
stuff like
people
that.
now I feel like there's UFCs like every single weekend. Like people just see so much fights and grappling like on TV. But talk about what it was like when you started, because there wasn't as much access to like video or like how were you guys finding and learning the techniques that you were practicing?
Well, like I said, I started with Craig Wilson, and we were training every week, and then he kind of got busy with work and family and stuff. So I would drive 3 hours to the Miramichi to train with Sam, and then train a few hours. And on the way up, you're going, "What am I doing? I'm a grown man. Like going to get my head beat in. This is stupid." And of course, when you're driving back, you're like, I feel like $1,000,000. Like I'm the toughest guy in the world. And when I would get home, he would email me what exactly we did. And then we had a few guys at the Taekwondo gym that would, like, "Hey guys, this is what I learned this week. We'll go over it and drill it and drill it." And then I'd go up another weekend and train some more. And then when I get back, he'd email me every single thing we did. And we just kept drilling like that over and over and over. And go to any seminars or tournaments if there was one back then. And yeah, we didn't have access to that stuff. Like, we had like magazines. Like, I was laughing. I showed a sweep the other day, and I was like, I literally learned this at like Gracie Mag of like 10 different, pictures, and it still works. And I still use it today. And people, look at you like you got 3 heads, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And like just the level, just like the dedication that you have to drive, 3 hours to go train and to do it with like 2 or 3 other people, or sometimes one other person. Like nowadays it's quite different, which is, there's the classes I find are a lot bigger. Like it's a lot more people that are interested in jiu-jitsu, people that probably might not have been interested like when you and I kind of got into it. What do you think about the evolution when you see kind of how far it's come?
It's nice, it's nice to almost be like a household name in your city, like before, like Taekwondo in our city and Judo's been here since I think about 50s. And, so everybody knows the names, but, to put jiu-jitsu on the map and be a household name for us is nice, because like we were talking before about, you're training in the back of a Taekwondo gym or, a boxing gym. And now we have these beautiful gyms that look like day spas, like
Yeah.
checking into some place. They're like the sterile environment, like you're going to a doctor's office now. So it's nice to see, that, people believed in it, and that, like I say, we stand on the shoulders of giants, all these people that did amazing things, in Brazil, the United States and things like that. And all these pioneers that we were talking about, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. So we're just fortunate those guys, like you said, put in that effort and that work and dedication. And, now everybody can benefit. Like, it's crazy. Back then, you walked into a gym, there's a bunch of white belts and maybe 1 blue belt, and that was it. Now people walk into a gym, there's probably 10 black belts to train with, and
Yeah.
brown and so on. So it's nice to see. It's
Sometimes
amazing.
you got it right. That's what I tell myself.
Like, you guys are lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. So another
like
thing that you too that's interesting about New Brunswick is I know it has a longer history with wrestling, and you mentioned judo. Talk a little bit about that. Judo and wrestling in New Brunswick, is it popular?
Wrestling, I can't speak too much about it. I know there was a few teams around, like Simon's High School used to have one in St. John, and down in St. Stephen, I believe they had a really good team, high school team back in the day. But there wasn't a whole lot around when I started jujitsu. But judo, yeah, judo's been here forever. Dutchy Shell, he kind of started in, I believe, the 50s. He just passed away a few years ago. And there's a really good book there. Something I would tell you, I got a bunch of collections of books, so I'll talk about it later.
Awesome.
I'm going to lend to you about the history of jiu-jitsu, but yeah, like judo's been in St. John a long time. I believe it was in the 50s that it started. If you ever want to really get the history on that, Chris Long is one of his former students, and knows all the history. And they just wrote a book about Dutchy's life and judo in St. John. So it'd be a good read.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I'm very interested to hear about that. Yeah, that's awesome. And you, John, I know you're someone like you're obviously black belt, very skilled in jiu-jitsu, but you've done quite a lot of work too on kind of like, I don't know if you would call it like the management or administration side, kind of like getting stuff together. I know you've helped with like that New Brunswick Association. Tell people a little bit kind of like what you've done, because I think you've really done a lot to kind of help kind of organize and make jiu-jitsu more well-known in New Brunswick. Talk about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm skilled at jujitsu. I just really love jujitsu, right? So, I'm the kind of guy like, don't tell me why not, tell me how, right? And that was the thing when they changed the laws in Canada for the combat sports. They basically said that you had to have a combat sports commission in your province, and they would take care of all combat sports. And judo, taekwondo, boxing, wrestling, and karate were exempt because they're Olympic sports. And so like, okay, great. So now jujitsu's illegal unless you go through the Combat Sports Commission, but they're only set up for MMA. So all athletes had to have medical. So you're going to have a 9-year-old kid get blood work and a CT scan to do a jiu-jitsu 3-minute match. So, and the chair of the commission realized that. And he's like, man, I'm so sorry, but basically you guys have to start an association. So like, no problem. So Sion Goodine from Woodstock BJJ and Melissa Hutchinson, they volunteered from Synergy to be on the board. So we did like the name search, got the BJJ New Brunswick, made it a nonprofit. And then in New Brunswick, we have Sport New Brunswick and we have the sport branch of the government. So we got recognized by Sport NB, which is really cool. They just basically want to see that you're having meetings, you have bylaws, constitution, all that kind of stuff. And then when we got accepted, what I was really happy is we got the same insurance as every other sport in New Brunswick. So that's huge, right? You know, you don't want to lose your house because somebody broke their arm in class in an accident, right? So it covers all the instructors, all the students, and it's $20 a year per member. So I was super excited about that. Then we contacted the sport branch of the provincial government, and Steve Harris, he was in charge of bringing new sports in, and was in contact with him. And same thing, they had a bunch of requirements, jump through hoops, and we actually invited him to a rogue tournament in Nova Scotia. We said, like, look, you know, you're missing out on all this. Like, we could be having this in New Brunswick, you know, people staying in hotels and eating and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of piggybacked the IBJJF, said, look, here's IBJJF. They have world championships, Pan Ams, and, you know, they have a rule set and all that. So we kind of piggybacked them. And even though they're kind of a company and not really a sports organization, but, and then we actually got prescribed. So the Lieutenant Governor of New Brunswick signed off at the legislature that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is now exempt. And so BJJMB can run her own things. And, you know, we get more benefits than that. There's other programs we can access through the provincial government, but that was huge, you know, getting insurance and then having tournaments legal in New Brunswick. So I was proud of that. Very, very proud.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't think people realize how much work is involved with that. And just like timeline wise, how long would you say from when you figured out, okay, we have to start an association, to when it was actually, okay, we had our first meeting or it's done? Like how long are we talking? Was it a year?
I'd probably say 3 or 4 years, probably.
3 or 4.
Yeah, because you got to convince the government we're not MMA. You know, we're Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We're our own thing. We're our own sport. And then you know, convince them we are legit. Like, you know, we're organized, and that was hard too. You know, convincing other people, like, you know, join BJJNB because there's benefits to it. You know, there's, you know, the more people that join it, the better it looks to the government, and the more that, you know, the more you're going to get. And I did the same thing with Taekwondo New Brunswick. And, you know, once you prove to the government, like, there's so much access to funding for like women in sport and things like that. And the more money you spend, the more they give you. So that's the hardest part, is like convincing people, like, come on, join. Like, it's a little bit of work, but if we all join in and help each other, then yeah, it's awesome. You can accomplish anything.
Definitely. Yeah. That's amazing. So now it's much easier to have a tournament. So what's like the process now if someone wants to, like, if I wanted to host a tournament tomorrow in New Brunswick, am I able to do that? What's the process for someone to host a tournament?
It's for any registered club in BJJNB. So anybody that owns a club that is under BJJNB, they can host a tournament. And then it's totally legal, because basically the government wants to take the liability off them and give it to you. So it's
Okay.
not that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu itself is legal and, anybody can come in and go, all right, we're going to have a tournament and heel hooks illegal for kids and slams for adults. Like, no, it's just that BJJ&B has taken on that liability and that mandate. So, yeah, so we did all the work. The government trusts us now. And so if you were a member club, you could have a tournament. And we just basically run off the same thing that like judo in New Brunswick or Taekwondo New Brunswick does the same thing. Any sanctioned clubs are allowed to host tournaments and yeah.
Awesome. So, and I think I've noticed quite a few more people signing up for tournaments, specifically for Rogue, that I can think of in the last couple times. Like, I think they had over 200 people sign up. Like, I think they had to cap their last tournament. Do you think it's the BJJ New Brunswick has helped with that? What would you?
I'd like to hope so. Yeah. Just, having things organized is really, really important because, if parents bring their kids to a tournament and they're sitting there all day and all the referees are using different rules and things like that, if it's not consistent, then yeah, like you're not going to see that the growth in the numbers. But yeah, if you keep it consistent and professional and keep improving, and taking criticism and improving the competitions, and yeah, they're definitely going to grow.
Yeah, and that's cool to see. Like, I feel like I specifically noticed a lot more kids competing, which is cool. I feel like there's often always a lot of beginners, but I've seen just more and more people getting out and competing, which is great. I think competition is great for people to really get a taste of what jiu-jitsu is kind of all about and for their own development.
Yeah. I mean, just that stress test, right? Like, regardless if you win or lose, just going out and experiencing that, it's like a out of body experience. The first couple, you barely remember anything, and it's good for you, right? Like it's, you get comfortable with jiu-jitsu, well, then go and compete. Get out of your comfort zone challenge yourself every time.
Do you remember your first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament?
Yes, I do. Yeah. It was in St. John. It was actually Britt Nickerson had the first tournament in New Brunswick. If you go on YouTube, I think if you look up Eastern Canadian Grappling Championships, you can see videos. There's like TJ Grant was here at one of them. Mike Kitson was here. Like funny story. I was running the Taekwondo club, and Britt rented it for this grappling tournament. And Mike Kitson comes in and says, "Man, I lost my blue belt. I need to buy a blue belt." And I'm like, "Well, I got these Taekwondo ones with like Korean characters on it." "I don't care, man. I need a belt." And he bought it. And a couple months later, I see him at another tournament. He's still wearing it. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, that's my belt now. I can't change that." I'm like, "Wow."
You must have won with it on.
Yeah. And then And then I remember that first tournament. I fought in the gi, and I was fighting this guy, and somebody was yelling at me because I had no coach. My coach was there at the time, and I could hear this guy yelling. And I was like, "Gee, what he's yelling is what I should be doing." So I kept following his advice. And I went over after. I was like, I thought you were yelling for the other guy, but were you yelling for me?" He goes, "Yeah, I noticed you didn't have a coach." And so I was yelling for you. I was like, "Well, thanks." And it was Jake McKenzie's father.
Oh, cool. Gary
Yeah.
McKenzie.
So I was like, "Oh my God, it's funny." Right. So, and my wife's from Brookfield, Nova Scotia. And she used to go to Spike's pool hall and stuff like that. So it's kind of funny to meet all these different people and,
Yeah, it's a small world. It really is.
very, very small world. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that was my first tournament. Yeah. In St. John in my Taekwondo gym at the time. And yeah, I got gold in the gi and silver in no gi.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember my first one too, and it would have been in Truro. I think I was probably like 9 or 10 months in, and I think everyone just has the same just terrified feeling when they're first going in. Like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? I remember before I even competed, the first match that I remember watching, the guys were going at it, and then the guy just threw up in his mouth and puked a little bit on the mat and then just ran away to the bathroom. And I was just like, is this what's going to happen all day?
Oh, well, at one of the tournaments that Britt had, this one guy did like a hip toss on another guy, and they're both like 200 pounds plus. And Buddy put his arm out to stop it, and his arm buckled. And everybody, basically ran out of the room barfing over this poor guy that, probably lost some mobility in his arm after that. And yeah, same idea. Like everybody's like, I don't know if we want to continue the tournament now. Like that was disgusting. An arm bent backwards, and the guy felt terrible that did it, and the guy that had it done to him felt even worse. But yeah, it's some scary times sometimes, right?
Yeah, now I feel like it's a lot more controlled, which is good for the tournaments. The referees are usually quite experienced, and it seems like a lot more like a controlled environment.
Well, now people start to understand the rules. Like, yeah, it's not MMA. It's not, we're not slamming like Rampage Jackson and stuff like that. Like, no, these are the rules, and it's a local tournament. You're not winning any money, so there's no point hurting somebody that's got to go to work on Monday, right? So I think it's a lot better now for sure.
Yeah, 100%. A little bit more on like the history stuff, I guess. Talk a little bit about you getting your black belts. Who gave you your black belts, and when was it? I know you're through MXT. So did Edgar Luque give you your black belt?
Yeah. So Edgar Luque, he promoted me to black belt from Max Strombini. It was in October of 2017, I believe. And yeah, that kind of comes back to a little bit of the history too, where there was two Brazilians teaching judo in St. John. Rodrigo Azench, who's out in Alberta now, he's got a huge gym, like a lot of affiliates, quite successful, and Edgar Luque. And they were teaching judo. They had a judo contract here. And somebody asked them like, too bad you guys didn't know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because everybody here is interested. And they're like, well, we have black belts in that too. People are interested in that here. Yeah, people want to learn it. So that's how we kind of met them and started training with them, and that's how I kind of get affiliated after that and started going to Brazil and stuff like that. So yeah, it was just crazy. We had two Brazilians here. I had no idea.
Yeah. Oh, we're also black from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Why don't we show you guys a couple of things?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. And they started teaching, and like we invited them over to the club, and Dana came down too, and we're like, yeah, no, these guys are legit, because back then you didn't know. You're like, well,
yeah,
guys from Brazil, they could be lying, you don't know, and then come to find out, no, they were 100% legit.
Yeah, I feel like we had that a lot more too. I mean, I trained a lot Titans when I was that's where I got my black belt in most of my training, and it was a lot of pretty rugged, tough dudes that wanted to train at MMA. But you mentioned sometimes kind of almost questioning, like, is this real stuff? Is this legit? I feel like that you don't really get much of that anymore, because everyone knows jiu-jitsu works. Everyone sees UFC, like they know it's real. But it's almost kind of fun. I almost kind of miss that a little bit sometimes. It's someone that. Not because you want to like hurt them or anything, but you just want to show them like, no, jiu-jitsu, like it really works. Like I'm sure you're like me, you want everyone to train. So I thought it's cool when someone's like, no, like I don't really think that would work or whatever. And it's just like, no, like, we'll definitely show you that it does.
Well, yeah, every once in a while you get some young guy that comes in and he's athletic, and then you'll roll them, and like I'm 46, and you roll with them, and then you see they kind of get the surprise look, and you're like, well, like, what do you think was going to happen? Like,
yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's like they're totally surprised, like, oh, I guess jiu-jitsu does work. And it's like, you don't have to look like Captain America, right, to be effective in jiu-jitsu, right? So
and sometimes I feel like some people, like even still very early on in their training, I'll tap them or whatever, and they'll be like, oh man, like frustrated. I'm like, dude, like relax. I've been a black belt for 8 years. You've been training for 6 months. One of my students, he said, I made a post the other day that it was my 8-year anniversary at black belt. And he said, he was like, man, he's like, I've only been training for 2 years. He's like, you've been a black belt 4 times the amount of time that I've even been training. So it's kind of weird. I think about that a lot recently, how a lot of people, they just see me as a black belt, but for me, there was so much time as a colored belt, like, tapping out and learning and getting frustrated. And like, people just kind of see black belts as like, oh, they must know everything. And like, they're so good and blah, blah, blah. But, so I guess they don't see the struggle, I guess, like that we went through. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. And like in other martial arts, like when I was in Taekwondo, it was always, I deserve my blue belt, I deserve my red belt, I deserve my black belt. And then in jiu-jitsu, I was always the opposite. Like, no, I don't want another belt. Like, I don't feel worthy. Like, I don't know what it is. Like with BJJ, we're always so like Dave McElduff, another black belt. We always talked about that. Like, you never feel good enough, right? And no matter how many tournaments you went to and how much training you did or how many guys you tapped in the gym, you never felt worthy. And I think it's probably because there are so many good people out there, and you're always looking up to them, and you're just you never feel as good as them, or
Yeah.
like I think it's a respect thing too, like like all those people ahead of me, like I'll never feel like I'm on their level, your level. I'll never feel like I'm ever on your level. Like you guys are like these OGs, and and it's like a respect thing, totally. That we never feel good enough, but
Totally. No, I appreciate that. And I think it's good because it keeps you humble and it keeps you hardworking too. Because you always want to strive to at least kind of come close to that level of technique. I'm the same way. Like when I watch, Marcelo Garcia and Rafa Mendez and all these guys, I'm like, man, that's what I want to look like. And I watch myself on video, and I'm like, man, I look like I walk with a wooden leg, So I feel the same way when I look at myself on video. And I think, but that's an important thing for people to hear, is like you want to strive to be great. Like you can do it. I did it. It's just hard work and timing, and you just work hard and keep doing it. But you can get to a level where people watch you and you're like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah. I think the big problem now, though, is like with social media and stuff, like if you're not the richest or the most famous or the best at whatever you want to do, it's almost like it's not worth doing anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, what, as long as you're the best you can be, then be happy, like maybe you'll never be world champion, but I had this great conversations there at the last row with some people, and I posted a video about maybe people say like I'm not good at jujitsu, and it's like, well, what does that even mean? Like, yeah, compared to Damian Maia, I'm terrible, but am I better than I was last year? Yes. And is jujitsu good for me? Yeah, jujitsu is really, really good for me.
Totally.
And other people, like if I quit jujitsu because I lost the tournament, think of all the people that would affect, so like your kids look up to you, your students, like there's so many people look up to you. So yeah, but I feel like sometimes especially young people, you see on social media, all these rich people like so successful, and I just almost feel like, okay, if you're not the best in whatever you want to do, then you shouldn't even do it. And it's like, no.
Yeah, it's hard. And it's like, it's just, I always feel like it's not fair. like the people that make Instagram and Facebook, they're way smarter than us. Like they know how to like keep us on there and keep our attention. And it's just like, that's why I think it's so bad for kids and stuff. But it's so hard to just like, it's so easy to get wrapped up in it and think, oh, if my post didn't get a lot of likes or views, like I must suck, or people must not be interested in me. That's why they took off like the number of likes that you see on people's photos and stuff. And even for myself on social media, I can definitely say like, well, I've tried to make a lot of videos and technique videos that like I hope people will be interested in. But now, like you said, more just trying to kind of think about what I think is important and what I'm worried about. Now I don't really care if a lot of people like it, but now I'm into kind of like a lot of like book reviews and stuff. Yeah. And that's just so I can kind of share like kind of what I learned. And also, I feel like I might forget in like a year or two and want to go back and be like, oh yeah, I picked up some good information from that book. And I feel like it's just good, useful for my students. Like I just try to picture now before I kind of post like, okay, if I'm talking to like one of my newer students, like would this be helpful for them or useful for them? Even if it doesn't like get a lot of like likes or whatever, like I know that's helpful, but it's but yeah, you want to try to just focus on like sharing good information with people as an instructor, because that's what's going to help them grow.
Yeah, exactly. The concepts and ideas and a little bit of philosophy and stuff like that goes a long way.
Yeah. And you guys, I know you have like a specific curriculum, right? That you guys kind of teach off of.
Yeah. So like, we don't have to stick to it strictly, but yeah, Max Strombini, our head coach, and he's really good friends with Damian Maia. And they came up with this idea, like having a curriculum, like, athletic people that are talented, they're going to get good no matter what you show them. But your average Joe comes in the door, he's not athletic. What technique should you be showing, and what progression should you be showing, so that, they're going to get the best they can in the shortest possible time and not get so left behind, from the athletic people. And so that's what we have. We had kind of a curriculum, and it's just basics, fundamentals, like mount escapes and scissor sweeps and arm bars and nice judo throws too. It's nice self-defense techniques. And for So it's very inclusive too. I like it that way because I like a little bit of self-defense too. Some people just come to train and work out and want to learn a little bit of self-defense. And there's good takedowns too. There's good competition moves too. There's lasso guard sweeps and everything like that too. But yeah, it's nice to actually have something because some days you go to teach and it's my mind is already wrote off from work, so it's nice to just go in and have that curriculum and to follow it. So
Oh,
yeah.
100%. I definitely relate to some of the same struggles as a teacher. Life's just so busy. Sometimes you're just like, oh man, I got to teach tonight or in the morning or whatever, and it's the end of the day, and you're just, you're sometimes just feel like you hit the wall. But it's good to have a curriculum because you can just kind of cherry pick from that kind of what you're interested in, and you'll never run out of ideas then.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's just like a framework and stuff like that. Sometimes I completely deviate from it, and other times I stick through it, and it's neat too. Like sometimes after competitions, it's just like, wow, this class here is exactly what everybody needs. Everybody's takedown sucks, and this class the takedowns are awesome, and so we'll do that for a couple of weeks and all different techniques. But yeah, it's nice sometimes and it's cool because I talk to my coach like almost every week, if not every day, and hey, what do you think of this technique, and what are you guys doing down there now in Brazil? And and he'll videotape stuff and send it up to me, and so it's nice to kind of stay current that way.
100%. When you started out, what were the techniques looking like? I know the Henzo guys, Kevin, Peter, they would obviously been big into close guard, guillotine, armbar, rear naked choke. Was that similar style? What were you guys kind of practicing when you?
Pretty much a similar. Like mount escapes, side control escapes. I know that Joe Moreira was all about passing, like smash passing, and a little bit of butterfly guard and stuff like that. But yeah, just real heavy smashing techniques. And yeah, I still have the VHS tapes of him. And it's just I think I was a white belt, and I wasn't even doing half guard right on the guy. It was hilarious. It was funny. But yeah, it was just really heavy smash, fundamental stuff. Nothing too fancy. Yeah, he was tough. He was really tough.
Yeah, no, 100%. You said he fought in the UFC, right?
Yeah, I think it was like 14 or something around there. Yeah.
So would he put on one? He probably would have put on one of the bigger kind of first seminars in New Brunswick, did Marcus Soros put on one? Who would have been the first kind of big seminar in New Brunswick?
I'd say Joe Moreira, and then after Dana was open for a bit, he was bringing Fabio Holanda down because they used to be under BTT, so we did some seminars with him. It was pretty much those guys were the big ones. Lucas Lepre's been here. I think they had some of the Mendez brothers.
Yeah, I was at that.
Yeah, so we've had a few good seminars here. What I find now though, like, we want to have a big showing when our own coach comes up. So now, like, sometimes you go to less other people's seminars and feel bad for it, right? But you want a big showing at your own coach's seminar. So sometimes we go to a little bit less now than we did, back in the day, because we used to go to everywhere. Go to PI for Hoyler. Miramichi, go to Halifax. When Jake come through town, we'd always have Jake McKenzie in for seminars. So yeah, we tried to do a lot, as much as we could.
Yeah. I was definitely at that Mendez Brothers seminar. I can't remember exactly when that was. I want to say maybe 2011, 12, maybe somewhere around that time. And I think I thought someone was involved with their website somehow, and maybe that was the connection to bring them up. I could be wrong on that, but somehow
sure.
Dana had them and contacted them and hosted them. And I thought crazy. The Mendez brothers in New Brunswick. We were like, we'll definitely sign up and go, like whatever the cost is. So yeah, that's kind of a cool little fact. I don't know if many people would know that, but the Mendez brothers, who are honestly, they probably have the most one of, if not the most successful gi competition school, Art of Jiu-Jitsu. They're killing it right now.
Yeah, they had a big show in there at the Worlds there last week. It was crazy. It was awesome.
Yeah. So that's amazing. And then one of the first tournaments I would have been at in New Brunswick, Dana hosted, and that was in Oromocto.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you would have been at that one. I think that one was maybe like 2009. It wasn't a huge one, but that would have been the first one I was at, and I still would have been a white belt at the time.
Yeah, I was at that one too, I believe. Or he had a couple, I think, but yeah, I was at one for sure. I think I fought a Brazilian guy, I forget his name, and Jon Gale too. I fought him there. So yeah, it was
Okay,
cool.
yeah. I'll have to look back because I have some videos from it. I'll have to see if I got you and John, because I know I definitely competed against John a couple times, because even back then, like, obviously you're competing against teammates quite often, and then I competed against a really good judo guy who beat me in the open weight. He was really skilled. But yeah, there's quite a few judo guys at the tournaments back then too.
Yeah. And I think that came from, like I said, where they were bringing the Brazilians up for these judo contracts, because I think it was JP Canton, who's like an Olympian.
Yeah,
I think he's okay. I think he's the guy that kind of started to realize, like, the judo in Brazil is phenomenal too, right? So I think they started saying, hey, let's bring these guys up and teach 6 months at a time, and in New Brunswick. And I think that's how we got that connection.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, JP. So yeah, he was there with a couple of his students competing at this tournament. And I remember me, Jon Gale, a couple of our other buddies, I think Chris White, who's a black belt now, and our Jody, we were all there. And I think they did gi no gi, and we were watching, and we saw JP, and we were like, wow, like, this guy is like launching people through the air, even his own students.
Yeah.
when he competed against them. And I remember it was honestly one of the only times where I've like been pretty scared. For my first match, yeah, I was more nervous, but I was like more like scared. I was like, I just really don't want to get hurt. Like going, because someone that's really good at judo, I don't know, there's almost like there's a danger that you feel that you don't get rolling with that jiu-jitsu guy sometimes, especially with the element where you're starting on the feet and they can throw you down so hard.
Yeah, and like, he's an Olympian at least once, if not twice.
Yeah,
like, he's a legend up here. He's another intense guy, really intense.
Amazing. I remember I pulled guard. I was like, well, I'll just pull guard, then he won't be able to throw me. But he still had such strong grips that it was like he was trying to toss me even while I was still like seated in butterfly guard. I was just happy not to get submitted by him. I was just able to hang on and hang on to half guard. But yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, he runs the training center up in Montreal now. I don't know if we're like with Judo Canada.
Okay, yeah, and there's still like a lot of successful, like some really high level Canadians in judo that are doing well in the Olympics and stuff. So that's really cool.
Yeah, no, again, small world, right? It's kind of neat to even share the mats with some of these people.
So yeah, that's awesome. So okay, so Joe Moreira, one of the first kind of pioneers to kind of bring a big seminar. He kind of had an affiliation and stuff here. Sam John, one of the first black belts. You said you got your black belt in 2017. Sam probably got his when in like 2007, 8, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, around that time. And then Dana wasn't much long after. I don't think so. Yeah, Dana was the next one. So like, Dana was another pioneer. Fought a lot of MMA, and we used to travel up to Fredericton all the time. So it's only an hour drive to train up with all those guys up there too.
Yeah, we used to come up all the time for Dana's like tournaments and seminars and all that. So yeah, I would agree. Dana definitely a big pioneer for jiu-jitsu in New Brunswick.
Yeah, and he got away from it a bit, but now he's back, and he's got Absolute BJJ, and it's huge now. It's great, very successful. Lots of kids, lots of adults going to the tournament, stuff like that. So it's nice to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so we're unofficially we're going with 39 black belts in New Brunswick. Roughly, right. John, how many do you think you have trained with, rolled with, or competed with?
Probably half of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say about half of them I've rolled with, trained with, or I'd say so.
I looked at the list before and I kind of counted. I had roughly like 10, so like less than a third.
Yeah.
I had only, when I had the 72 from Nova Scotia, there's only 12 that I counted that I have not rolled or trained with. So at first it was kind of cool, but then it kind of made me feel old.
Yeah. That's the funny part now. I feel very, very old.
Yeah. But what's cool for us now is that, obviously we're black belts. We've gone through a lot of the all the colored belts and stuff, but now we both have schools and students. And talk about how much you enjoy kind of teaching and being an instructor. And I'm sure it's jiu-jitsu is probably different for you from when you started getting beat up every day, but now you kind of get to share what you know and teach and talk about that.
Yeah. With my gym now, my black belts took over. So I only teach a few nights a week. I don't teach 5 nights a week anymore because I did that from 2017 till 2021. I think I taught like 4 days a week, all the kids classes, all the adult classes, ran the office, did all that. And so it was getting too much. So my black belts and we talked, and they said, no, we'll take over, and I can sit back, and it's a lot better now. So now my son actually comes and trains with me, and so we're really enjoying that, and it's a little bit better fit for me now because, like I said, where I was teaching and teaching and teaching, now I can kind of step back, and somebody else is teaching the class. I can take the time to give somebody a little more attention and things like that. For me, it's just really helping people have a better life. Like that's what helping people get through hard times, and sharing the mats and seeing people grow as people, right? And because that's what I not to toot my own horn, but I get so many comments, and even at the Rogue there, I was almost to tears. People telling me about things just a simple conversation, and it changed people's lives and helped them out. And so that's what really motivates me to keep doing jiu-jitsu. I tell people, like, jiu-jitsu is kind of the medium where I get to help people, right? Like some people do it through other methods and means, and jiu-jitsu just seems to be this natural path for me to help people through martial arts. And so that's I love it. Every night I go on the mats, like, as I was laughing, you see that meme there about the white belt, and he's wearing all the jiu-jitsu apparel, and then it's got like Tom DeBlas, and he has like nothing on, that would say jiu-jitsu. And I was like, yeah, but I'm the black belt, but I'm still that white belt guy. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu, I'm at a party, jiu-jitsu, I'm at a barbecue, jiu-jitsu, I'm always putting the decals on the car, and, I still got that white belt mentality, right? To share jiu-jitsu, because it's given me so much, right? It's given me so much, so many, made me a better person, a better father. It's just given me so many great memories, like it's been a good life, right? It's been a good life through jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I think that was well said. And for me, whether we want to be or not, as black belts, we're role models. So people kind of, they admire us. Like you said, a lot of people look up to us. At first, it was something I kind of really wrestled and struggled with, because I got my black belt and I was like, 25 or 26 or something. So, you want to just party and be young and not be a role model. But the more, life goes on, you just kind of have to accept it. So I find now, just like you said, when I'm at tournaments and stuff, even if it's not obviously I want to do a good job coaching my teammates and students, but I try to, if someone has a good match and I see it, I try to tell them, like, hey man, that was an awesome match that you had. That was a sick sweep, because I feel like it probably means something to them. They say like, oh man, a black belt saw my match. He said it was good. I know I would have loved that when I was a blue belt, if someone saw my match and Kev, or a black belt that I didn't have trained with me, and was like, oh, that was sick. So I really try to do that a lot more often than I ever did. Like when I'm busy reffing and stuff a lot, but if I try to see something and I think it's cool, like I try to tell people. Or like you said, if someone's there and they don't have a coach, I'll say, hey, do you want me to coach for you if it's possible? Like I really try to kind of you want to give people those stories and those moments to be like, oh man, that was so cool when that guy helped me out or gave me some tips, because I would have loved that when I was a blue belt.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I got from jiu-jitsu, because when I did taekwondo, it was so standoffish, and you're mean mugging your competitors and stuff like that. And then when I got to jiu-jitsu, and I remember competing, and even against a really tough match, and after the guy, oh man, you almost caught me in this, and what were you doing there? And hey, if you're ever down in our city, you come train with us. And you're like, wow, that's different, right? And just made a big difference. So yeah, like you said, you never know who's gonna remember that little small conversation. And even I was talking to some little kid, I didn't even remember doing it, but I guess this kid lost a match, and I went by and I was like, hey, you know what, someday you're going to be wearing a black belt, and I guess that was a huge thing for this kid. And the parents come over and told me, and I was, like I said, I was almost bawling, right? Just just some so simple, and it takes such little effort, but
Yeah.
I find when you do something positive, it comes back like tenfold, like it grows. You do something bad, it's a bad thing, but it doesn't seem to grow as good as a good thing. A positive thing just seems to just multiply and multiply and multiply. And so you think like a simple smile or a 60-second conversation is not a big deal. And then to come to find out a lot of times it is.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's meaningful for people. I would definitely agree. I had the same experience where people like, oh, you said that, you said this, or you did that, and sometimes I'm like, I did, like I don't. Sometimes I don't even remember, It's, cool, It's I just like you. It's sometimes makes you emotional. So it's yeah, I would agree. I love teaching and helping people with their jiu-jitsu, and like you said, it does kind of push people to kind of I feel like do better and hopefully have a better life. So yeah, that's something that's I really, really do love about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, like I don't think the founders knew this was going to happen, but it is. It's like for mental health, stress relief, yeah, like if you can deal with jiu-jitsu, you go to work. Like, what can my boss say to me that can, you know,
Yeah.
what can they do to me? Nothing. Like it's
with the stresses of life a lot better.
Yeah, you just deal with it. It's like, man, it's not a big deal. Like, I was stuck in a triangle for 3 minutes at the gym today, and I got out. So
yeah, like this guy honking his horn at me isn't as bad as Joe Pilmer trying to armbar me.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I like that about jiu-jitsu. If you train hard, you let a lot of stuff roll off your back. You're not going to get as fired up emotionally. Because one thing a lot of coaches don't talk about is, and myself too, is like kind of like the emotional control with jiu-jitsu. That was a big thing with the Gracies. Staying cool and calm under fire. Which I do a lot of positional training to kind of get that, to emphasize that. But I think that's something that's maybe lost a little bit. You want to have that emotional control. The Gracies were so kind of like stone faced, just go in and just be a total killer. So yeah, just kind of a thought.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's hard to replicate in the gym, those nerves. And I see a lot of my own students, they get to that first tournament and they're totally prepared, but it's just that intensity, that first minute or 30 seconds just throws them right off. And it's like, yeah, like, it's hard to replicate those nerves in the gym, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta go to a couple tournaments first, get those jitters out, and then it's kind of smooth sailing after that. But
yeah,
sometimes it's hard to deal with.
Do that with cardio, because a lot. I'm not that you can't have better cardio, but I think everyone's like, I gotta have better cardio. But then when I watch a lot of people, it's like, no, you need to relax and like pace yourself a bit better because you're using all your gas in the first minute or 2 minutes. But that took me a long time to figure out, like, oh, okay, I have to set my pace at about 60% instead of 80 or 90% because I'm gonna gas out after a minute.
Yeah, like I've coached people in Taekwondo and they didn't take a breath in 2 minutes. They come back and their lips are blue and like, what should I do? Should breathe, take a breath. Yeah. Like, yeah, totally. Like you're basically drowning out there. Like, take a breath, breathe, relax.
Yeah.
And I try to explain that to newer students too. Like whether I'm almost passing your guard or you're almost passing my guard, or you're almost tapping me or I'm almost tapping you, your breathing shouldn't change, right?
Right.
And that's the thing. Sometimes they get close to an arm bar and they hyperventilate, or they're almost tap out and they hyperventilate. It's like, no, like your breathing shouldn't change a whole lot. Like, and sometimes you're playing possum.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Hicks and Gracie, he's so into like the breath work and stuff. And I think that like he never ever had cardio issues. Not that there's a lot of footage on him or anything, but he never ever complained about getting tired or anything. And I think that's because he had such good control over his breath and
breathing, his emotions.
Totally.
And I like playing possum sometimes. I don't know how many times I've had like a white belt on my back. I'm almost going to tap. And then they let go. And they're like, oh, I wasn't even close. Like, buddy, you were this close.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't hear any sound or you weren't panicking. I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm a black belt.
Yeah.
You play possum sometimes.
Yeah. Fun. Yeah. No, that's cool. So just kind of wrapping up, just a couple, couple random questions for you. In your jiu-jitsu career, who would you say you have rolled with the most? One person that you think you've rolled with the most?
Someone I've rolled with the most, probably Joe Pilmer.
Joe Pilmer. Yeah.
Yeah, we have some great roles. Like we bring the best out in each other, and we can trust each other. Like we do heel hooks on each other, and we do all kinds of moves, and it's nice. Like we, not that we let each other do stuff, but you know it just, the best comes out. It's nice. It's a really nice flow. And sometimes we're going real super hard, sometimes we're going super slow and technical, and yeah, we just seem to have these really good flows and really good rolls. And after, like, even if you got beat, or you won, you felt like, wow, like that was awesome.
Yeah.
Really brings the best out in you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love Joe Pilmer. He's someone that, it's funny because I saw him when he was a blue belt. I think I might have even done commentary on some blue belt tournament that he was in. And then
Yeah.
fast forward a couple of years later, like, well, now I got to compete against him. And he's flubbing now. He's not a blue belt anymore, and now he's a really good black belt. So it's cool to see the evolution of people like that.
Yeah, it was. I kind of consider Joe. He kind of put us on the map because they had the first blue belt challenge there down in Pictou, and Joe went down and won the whole thing, and feel like, oh, who's these MXT guys, right? So it was kind of nice. I really think that Joe kind of put us on the map, or at least got us some really, really good attention. And yeah, it was nice. And he's competed so much, and he's such a good representative of MXT. Like, he's like the poster boy for us, for sure.
Yeah, and jiu-jitsu, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Give us a couple of your favorite martial arts movies.
Favorite martial arts movies? Oh man, Best of the Best. Best of the Best is one of my favorites. Bloodsport, and American Ninja, for sure.
I don't think I've seen that one. Tell me about American Ninja.
Well, I remember watching all these ninja movies when I was a kid, right? Growing up in the 80s and 90s, and ninja was a huge thing back then. And Michael Dudikoff, he's the actor in it. I actually met him. He was in St. John shooting a movie one time, years and years ago. It's crazy. I think it was during COVID. I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch all these stupid movies from when I was a kid and see how bad they really were. And I rewatched American Ninja, and it was really not that bad. It's basically this guy in the army, and he's got amnesia. He can't remember anything, but he's a ninja. And so as he's going through, fighting people and the bad guys and drug dealers and stuff like that, then he finally remembers that he was like crashed on an island and learned from a ninja. And yeah, it's goofy. It's American, propaganda, but it's good. American Ninja, check it out.
Yeah, no, I get some good movies suggestions from that question. Another one. Who, if you could pick anyone to have a 5 to 10 minute roll with, anyone that's you could watch on Flow Grappling, or anyone who's anybody, if you could pick one person and they could show up at your gym tomorrow and you could have 1 10-minute roll with them and ask them a couple questions after, who would you pick? Anyone you could pick in the world.
Man, there's so many. Wow. Like, I love Damian Maya.
Yeah.
Leandro Lowe, he passed away. But Mika Galvao would be fun. Eric Muniz, he'd be fun too.
Okay. He's a new
really, like, there's some guys that I follow, like new school guys, and there's some old school guys that wouldn't mind rolling with too. But probably see Damian Maya. I really enjoy him. Just his personality. He's such a down to earth guy. Speaks good English too, so that's a bonus. And I feel like he really did a lot for jiu-jitsu too. In the UFC world and stuff like that. So a lot of respect for him.
Totally. What was the next one I was going to ask you? Oh yeah, who is your favorite all-time MMA fighter?
All-time MMA fighter. I'd say GSP.
He's mine too.
Yeah, GSP. Again, like, when you're young and crazy, you like these, the Conor McGregors and stuff like that. But then as you mature as a martial artist, you really appreciate like the Damian Mayas and the GSPs, and Anderson Silva, I liked him too. Like, the guys are really respectful, and because like you said, whether you like it or not, you're a role model. And and not an athlete. You're a martial artist. You're a role model. So yeah, definitely GSP.
Yeah, he's you can't go wrong with him. He's got such a good character, and he's such a highly skilled martial artist. And it still looks like he's still training and is in better shape than he was when he was fighting. If you see pictures of him.
And I liked how he would go, like, he just trained boxing and master it. Then he'd go to wrestling. They said he could have made like the Canadian Olympic team for wrestling. And then he goes to Brazil and trains jiu-jitsu like crazy, and just, every aspect of the martial art. Like, he was a true martial artist, and yeah, he was phenomenal. I laughed. You ever see the picture? It's like, I'm going to kick that garbage man's ass. And then it has a picture of him on the back of the garbage truck, because I guess he used to be a garbage man.
Yeah.
Super nice guy.
You said you had a good stash of books. Tell us about a couple of the old school history on jiu-jitsu books that you got.
Yeah, I want to lend them to you sometime. Basically, I was talking about Chris Long. He's one of my students in Miramichi. He runs MXT up there, and he inherited like a big book collection, and he still collects old books about jiu-jitsu. And cool. Each time I go to teach a seminar, he gives me a copy of one of them. And so I've got like jiu-jitsu books from like 1912, 1920, 1930s.
That's cool.
From like England and the United States. And it's quite interesting. It's really interesting. I even have a copy of the Toughest Man Who Ever Lived about Maeda. I guess they're hard to get now. So yeah.
That's cool. That's really,
yeah. And I got reading about it. I guess it was really popular in the States. And so people started just making fake ones just to make money. So they weren't necessarily really judokas or jujiteros. They just made books to try to make money. So some guys were legit making these actual books, and then some of them are they can't even, like, have no idea who the guy was or what his lineage was or his training. So yeah, so I might have a couple of those too.
That's awesome. So last question, just wrapping up. So I'm sure you get this question a lot, but when someone's just getting started, they're, maybe a month or 5 to 10 classes in, what's some advice that you give some white belts that, they're struggling, you can see they're frustrated, they feel like they're getting beat up. What's something that you would say to, kind of encourage people to stay with it?
Just don't get frustrated. It takes time. And everybody goes through it. It's like the stages of life, learning to walk, tie your shoes, going through puberty. Like everybody has to go through it. You can speed it up a little bit, but you just gotta put that time in, and don't be so hard on yourself.
Yes.
Like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, so what? You got tapped. Who cares? Like, tapping's, like I say to the kids a lot, like, if you're playing basketball and the other team gets a basket, you don't cry and quit and stop the game. You just keep going. And the same thing with tapping. Like, don't get too hard on yourself. Like, just enjoy the journey, especially adults. Just enjoy the journey. Like, you might end up being the best guy. You might be the worst guy. Who cares? Like, jiu-jitsu is so good for you. Stick it out. Don't be too hard on yourself, and just enjoy the journey. Don't put any pressure. Like, there's no goals, right? There's no goals yet, right? So just enjoy it. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the process.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And I would even say, even sometimes when people are drilling, they're far too hard on themselves. Where sometimes I'll show a technique, I'll see someone try it one time, and they'll be like, no, there's no way I can get this. It's like, no, like, I had to drill this hundreds of times before I could start to get it, right? Like, you have to give yourself time. So I think that's great advice. Be kind to you when you're doing this.
Yeah, I see the same thing in my students. You show them a move, and then they're trying it in a live roll against Joe Pilmer, and it's not working. It's like, well, no, like, you got to, like, just practice the move, then practice it, light in a drill, and then in a light roll. I was like, you think you're going to tap him out the first time doing this new armbar? Like, no, it's not going to happen. Like, or a sweep or anything. Like, no, it's step by step, right? You can't go, 0 to 60. It's not going to happen. So patience,
baby steps. That's how you learn. And, everyone gets frustrated, but if you just keep at it and stick with it, like, you'll look back and be like, man, you're developing some good skills. So yeah, just, I think that's a good thing to end on. Be kind to yourself and be patient. And if you put the time in, you will definitely, you won't regret it. You'll be happy that you did it.
Yeah. Everybody's on a different path. Like, I used to say, like, don't look to your left, don't look to your right. Like, I remember having 3 brown belts, and one went to every tournament, one taught every single class, and one competed MMA. And I was like, all these 3 guys are equals, but I can't expect everybody to go to every single tournament. I can't expect anybody to teach every class. I can't expect people to fight MMA. Like, everybody's on a different path. So just stick with it, enjoy it. Don't be too hard on yourself. And, everybody's going to get to the top of the mountain, just probably a different path. So relax.
100%. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Jon. That was really fun talking about kind of the history of New Brunswick and learning about more about you and about how you started. And thanks a lot for doing this. It was I really enjoyed it.
No, I appreciate it. No, I really appreciate it. I'm a jiu-jitsu nerd. I love it. And hopefully we'll meet up soon, and I can lend you those books. You'll get a
definitely, and you'll eventually see those on my Instagram. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Jon. It was really fun chatting with you, and have a great night. I'll see you soon.
All right. Take care, guys. Go train.
Have a good one. Thanks.
You too. Bye.